Chapter 21 of Cabinet of Wonders, The Magician Who Wasn't. Master D stood to the side of the open door in his chambers, his hands hidden inside his robes. "Do come in, my dear." His voice was polite, but Petra had been a servant long enough to recognize an order when she heard one. She stepped into the room, lit by only one green brassica lamp. Astrophil was perfectly still and silent. She had the impression that he did not dare speak to her in the company of John D. She, too, felt uneasy that this foreigner knew her name, had plucked her out of hundreds of servants, and had steered her past the guards onto the fourth floor. He moved in the shadows. He lit several candles by two velvet chairs. "Would you care to sit down?" Petra sat, and so did he. His robes blended into the chair. Petra couldn't tell where the chair stopped and the man began. He waited for her to speak. She looked around the room. John D. was a lover of games. There was a chessboard, an open box with a red felt interior, and two sets of dice, and an odd board covered with black and white discs. The only game she could play decently was cards, and even then Tomik often beat her. Still, she decided to try bluffing. In a very strong voice, with all the confidence that she didn't feel, she said, "What do you want from me? I haven't done anything wrong." She wasn't sure what effect she had hoped for, but amusement wasn't it. As Dee laughed, Petra suspected that he had noticed her eyeing his games. Maybe he had, in fact, left them out deliberately, and guessed her feeble attempt at strategy. It was even possible, she thought with dawning fear, that he was able to read her mind. She remembered Astrophil's silence and realized that this had already occurred to the spider. "My dear," Dee said, "the question you should be asking is this. Do we want the same thing?" Petra folded her arms. "Fine. Do we? Look in the box on my writing table." "Which box?" For there were several, of all sizes and made of different kinds of wood. The man was clearly fascinated by boxes, or at least he wanted people who entered his room to believe he was. "The long, flat one made of mahogany," Dee said. She paused. "Mahogany is a red wood harvested in a tropical land where everyone is born a twin," he told her. Petra gave Dee an odd look. Did he know that she had been a twin? She walked toward the escritoire, making sure not to turn her back on him. She selected the box and opened it. Inside was a small oil painting of a woman with red hair piled on her head in elaborate twists. She was wearing a full yellow dress studded with jewels, but as Petra looked more closely, she saw that they were not jewels, but dozens of eyes and ears. She slammed the box shut. "She is the queen of my country," said Dee. "I am Her Majesty's most valued eyes and ears. I suppose you could call me a spy, though I think that word hardly suits my skills. Your prince may think I am here on a purely ambassadorial visit to amuse him with fireworks and stories about places he's never seen. I hope, however, that he does not think this, for that would belie the intelligence I know he has." "I don't see what I have to do with anything you're talking about. I'm just a servant girl." "If you are a servant, then you will obey my commands. You will obey me when I suggest that you do not pretend to be ignorant. It wastes my time and yours." She was silent. "Let us play a quick game. It is a game of deduction. If I know who you are, then does it not stand to reason that I know a little more about you? What would Petra Kronos, daughter of Mikhail Kronos, be doing miles away from her home and in the sleepy village of Okno? How do you know who I am?" "I have my ways." Dee noted her frustrated expression with a small smile. "Being a daughter of an artisan, you won't blame me for keeping my trade secrets, I'm sure. If you would like to know what they are, why then you will have to come work for me." Petra snorted. She forgot the nervousness she had felt when she first walked into the room. Strangely, the fact that this man knew her identity made her feel free. No matter what she said or did, her fate was now in John Dee's hands. There was only one thing left for her to do: despise him for it. "I would like to share some information with you," he continued. "I would like to tell you that more things are at stake here than your little plot. England knows about the prince's weapon. I am speaking, of course, about the clock your father built. We know that the prince does not yet understand how to use it, but it is only a matter of time before he does, or finds someone who can. He would have done better to keep your father close at hand, locked up and easily accessible for information. But the prince is young and proud of his own skill. He also has a fatal weakness for beauty and those who produce it. No doubt, he thought by sending your father home, he was honoring both him and his own ability to eventually master the thing your father created. But what if the prince gives up trying to prove that he is just as talented as Mikhail Kronos? It may not be long before the prince admits his mistake and sends your father an invitation to the castle. Or will it be but Will it be an invitation mounted on rich cloth and tied with a ribbon? Or will it perhaps be one accompanied by armors and swords and pikes? What? Silent, Petra? I would have thought that this was a topic close to your heart. But well, if you do not feel it is important enough to discuss, we can move on. I wonder, have you ever wondered why the symbol of Bohemia royalty is a salamander? She said nothing but glared. A salamander loves fire. It lives in it, breathes in it, survives in spite of, because of, the heat that would kill you and me. The choice of symbols is never random. The princes of Bohemia have never been afraid of trouble. They have invited it. They have encouraged anger between the rich and the poor to split the people into classes that despise each other. They have pushed their people to the brink of starvation. They have courted war. Prince Rodolfo is not afraid of, shall we say, a little heat, because heat is what gives him power. It is one political view. It is not for me to say whether it is bad or good. It is a strategy, and certainly the princes of Bohemia have profited by it. We English, however, are rather cold fish. Ours is a chilly climate. It rains enough to make a person feel perpetually damp. Our patron saint is George the Dragon Slayer. The symbol we have chosen is a battle against a fire-breathing beast. It shows the death of fire. Obviously, international politics interests you very little. Those unusual silver eyes of yours turn away as if you are listening to a boring school lesson. You do not see much behind the horizon of yellow hills and your petty familial problems, but I assure you that Europe hangs in the balance, and I will make you care about it. The emperor is ill and old and has too many sons to whom he has given too much power. When he dies, will the Habsburg princes be content with the small countries they already possess? Will they agree with Karl's choice of a new emperor? Or will they war among themselves and drag all of Europe into their struggle for the Habsburg Empire? I think we both know the answers to these questions, and we know them because of what Prince Rodolfo commissioned your father to build. He clearly has higher ambitions than just being the Prince of Bohemia. England could choose to support one of the three princes now, before the coming war. Indeed, this is what Rodolfo hopes will come of my visit. But choosing the wrong side would be disastrous for England. Even choosing the right side would not make my country safe. Her Majesty prefers to keep England's neutrality. She prefers to not get involved at all in these Central European problems. But inaction poses other problems, particularly when we consider the clock's power. If he were able to make a clock work to control the weather, it would be easy for Rodolfo to defeat his brothers and seize control of the empire. All he would have to do is dry up the lands of Hungary and Germany in a brutal drought. This would cause mass starvation in these countries. With the clock, it would be equally easy for him to cow other countries into agreeing to his every wish. Indeed, if he chose to, it would be child's play for him to conquer the rest of Europe. England, however, has no desire to be added to Rodolfo's collection, which is why the clock's potential ability to control the weather must be destroyed. And which is why, dear Petra, I'm very glad to have met you. Your father has, so to speak, let a genie out of its bottle. It will be your job to put it back in. Me? Why don't you do it? She sarcastically added. You're obviously much more talented and intelligent than I am. True. He inclined his head. But in order to play this game properly, I must do so invisibly. I must be like your father and make pieces move without seeming to be responsible for their movements. If the prince were to suspect my intentions, there would be dire consequences for me. But, for the first time he looked worried, the consequences for my country would be far worse. And so I am ready to strike a deal with you, Petra. What kind of deal? A very easy one. You only have to ask, you only have to do a little favor for me. Then you might gain my help in your quest. He unfolded his arms, and the dark velvet sleeves slipped back, revealing his hands for the first time. His nails were long, curved, and sharp, making his hands look like the claw of an animal. He reached into a pocket and drew forth a small glass bottle with green liquid inside. He uncorked it, dabbed a little on the tip of his forefinger like a lady might put on perfume, and then rubbed his left thumbnail with the oily finger, making it shine. All you have to do is look carefully at this thumbnail and tell me what you see. This did not seem like a good idea to Petra. Her father may not have cared to make sure she knew what kind of dress a 12-year-old girl should wear, but he did see to it that certain parts of her education were not lacking, and that including knowing how to steer clear of dangerous magic. She knew perfectly well the sort of thing Dee proposed, scrying could break her mind. She liked the way her mind was sane. I thought you said you weren't a magician. I hope you do not believe everything you are told, my dear. What if I don't want to look at your greasy old nail? What's to stop me from going directly to the prince and telling him all about your plans? You and your stupid queen wouldn't be so happy then. I would deny everything you told the prince. Whom would he believe, you or me? I would reveal your identity and your own plans, and then there, he snapped his sharp fingers, would go and then there would go your hope to regain your father's sight. Oh, and I believe you would also lose yours. She was trapped, just as surely as if he had locked her inside one of his boxes. Come, Petra, it's a fair bargain. We are trading vision for vision. So if I tell you what I see, you will help me get my father's eyes back? I said that I might help you. That seems like a very bad deal to me. Sadly, it is the only one you will be offered. Then I refuse. Then I shall have to send for the prince. She felt like kicking him. Instead, she marched forward and glanced at his claw-like hands. I don't see anything. How can you see if you do not look? He held up his left hand and extended his thumb. Look. The slick nail gleamed like a large green pearl. The lamplight flickered on its surface. As Petra gazed at it, she found that she could not look away. She grew dizzy and the room darkened around her. But just as suddenly her vision cleared and she lifted her head. I didn't see anything, she said with relief. G withdrew his hand. That is a pity. Still, I think I shall have to keep up my end of the bargain. I shall help you first by giving you information. Surely you have some questions you would like answered. How can the clock be destroyed? He gave a slight shrug. I don't know. What is the prince's magical talent? I'm not at liberty to say. She gave him a look made of steel. What good is it to ask you questions if you don't have any answers? Try the right question. What is the Cabinet of Wonders? Ah, Dee beamed. So you know about that already. Good girl. The Cabinet of Wonders is the prince's private collection. He is a lover of objects that are beautiful, strange, and priceless. Naturally, your father's eyes fall into that category. Now I have learned the source of the prince's difficulty in using the clock to control the weather. It appears that your father failed to assemble one last part before he was blinded. Wearing your father's eyes seemed to give the prince some aid in putting that part together, because I believe they allow the prince to see the metal components as your father could, but the prince hasn't been entirely successful in his efforts. I suspect the prince keeps the part in his prized collection. It would be useful if he could gain access to the Cabinet of Wonders. I will suggest to the prince that he employ you as a maid to his chambers, or rather, I will make the suggestion to someone in position to persuade this prince. And to take the blame if I succeed in getting my father's eyes back? I sensed disapproval, he clucked. Surely you are not suggesting that I should be the responsible party for your actions, Petra, Dee chided. Whether you wish to ignore the consequences of your actions is wholly beside the point, that there will, indeed, be several unpleasant ones. He paused, waiting to see if she would reply. When she did not, he continued. The prince likes to have one person assigned to clean his room of the to clean one room of the 7 rooms in his suite. His collection is so important to him that he doesn't like to expose its existence to too many people. The problem is that he tends to grow suspicious of his pages and maids. He recently fired a girl named Aliska. A cold, creeping feeling stole over Petra. She recognized that name. It had been the captain of the guard's worry vial. I think it should not be too hard to promote you to take her place. The Countess of Krumloff is pleased with your work. I observed you closely during the celebrations in the courtyard, and I noticed that the prince took an interest in you. You caught his eye. Or, I should say, you caught your father's eye. The prince is a man led by curiosity, and you have sparked his. And now I shall help you in one last way. Dee reached into a pocket and pulled out a small brown bottle and gave it to her. Petra did not like the way he kept presenting bottles out of his pocket. It made her realize that he had planned this conversation with her for a while. What is it? It is belladonna. If you put one drop in each eye, it will make them look black. You look a great deal like your father. I would advise you to hide any family resemblance as much as possible. Use the belladonna when you go to the prince's chambers. Do not use it if you plan on seeing Countess of Krumloff. She will notice the difference. Well, obviously, I have a brain, you know. I do know. I have confidence in your abilities. In fact, I know that when you retrieve your father's eyes, you will also bring about the destruction of the clock's special powers. Find that part and break it, or I shall see that you and your family pay the price for the clock's creation in the first place. That was not part of our deal. Dee smirked. Ah, but it was an implicit part of our deal. You are such an honorable young girl. Surely you will keep to the spirit of our pact and not just the letter. And remember, there are more ways than one to skin a cat. Or, in this case, to make certain that the prince is never able to use the clock. Let's say your father were to disappear. This would eliminate the chance the prince could send for him to solve his rather annoying problem of not knowing how to make the clock of Mikhail Kronos work the way he wishes. But I don't know what the part looks like, and I certainly don't know how to destroy it. Oh, it can't be that hard. It's easier to break something than to create it. He tapped a finger against his lips, considering. When he spoke, it was with the voice of someone who thought he was being very generous. I'll tell you what, my dear. If I gather any new information on the clock, I shall pass it along to you. When you receive my message, you shall do exactly as I say. Now, how does that sound? She struggled not to shout, but what she said still came out as a growl. The day I come into my powers is the day you'd better be worried, Dee. Ah, but who knows if you'll have any, he replied airily. You may be as talented as a block of wood. Perhaps your father has had skills to be wary of. But what about your mother? She was no one special. Petra nearly told him what indeed she had been, but stopped the words before they reached her lips. He had already collected too much knowledge about her through unknown means. She shouldn't present him with details about her life as if they were little cakes on a platter. She certainly shouldn't mention her newfound ability to speak secretly with the tin spider hiding in her hair, or her accuracy with throwing daggers. Are we done? I want to leave. Allow me to accompany you to the door. In a fluid movement of velvet, he stood up and walked with her. Petra, he said as she stepped into the hallway, let me give you a word of advice. It is not wise to make threats. He smiled. Someone might take them seriously. And then he shut the door.